little bit about one of Pueblo's more interesting visitors from history, and I'll begin by saying punks. That's what these kids are nowadays, punks. The wannabe gangsters. Now me, I was a real gangster, wanted all across the country. I was born Charles Arthur Floyd in 1904, but after my mug started making the wanted posters, everybody called me Pretty Boy. Pretty Boy Floyd. By the way, the picture for them wanted posters was taken right here in Pueblo, but I'll come back to that later. Yep, that was me, Pretty Boy Floyd. Can't say that I like the nickname, and I guess it was the same for my compadre, Babyface Nelson. Now, I never thought he looked much like a baby, and neither did he. Now, I ain't saying I was the most popular bad boy in the 20s and 30s, but I done pretty good. When I was 18, I robbed the post office for $3.50 in pennies. Pretty dumb idea, taking pennies. But after that, I branched out. I robbed banks, I peddled drugs, and I shot people. 6. I killed 6 men in my time. Can't say that I'm proud of that, but when you're in a corner, it seems like there ain't no other way out. Especially when you're dubbed one of the top 10 gangsters in the country. A lot of people looking to get a piece of you, you know? Now, I had me a hideout in Cookson Hills, Oklahoma. That's where I would go to get jobs. Hospitable folks in them hills. They called me Robin Hood of the Cookson Hills. You see, word got out that when I robbed banks, I also destroyed mortgage papers. You're welcome. I also tried to share what I stole, and it made me pretty popular with the locals. And once or twice a year, I'd make to my hometown, buy myself some flashy duds, and I'd strut around town. Not a smart idea, no, but I got such a kick out of sticking it to the feds. It's a nice little town you got here. I was here once, you know. May 1929. I was staying at the boarding house down on Union with 3 or 4 of my lady friends, you know, thinking we could start a business with these dolls. Then the place gets raided by 3 of Pueblo's finest. They thought we was with Red Sheeman, who was wanted for robbery over in Kansas City, Missouri. We got picked up, sentenced to 60 days in jail and a $50 fine. They wound up getting me for vagrancy. But they let me out after a week, as long as I promised never to come back here. Anyway, it was about that time my picture got taken. And soon after the death of John Dillinger, that picture wound up on the wanted posters that named me Public Enemy #1. And that photo was taken right here in this building. And it worked. A few years later, the feds cornered me and my gang in a little town called East Liverpool, Ohio, October 22nd, 1934. Now, I'd almost been pinched by the feds lots of times, but this time I knew it was over. So I stepped out of my car, pulled my gun, and I went out cussing the feds. And it was all over in just a couple of minutes. 20,000 people attended my funeral when they planted me in Atkins, Oklahoma. It's the largest funeral Oklahoma has ever had. 5 years later, a guy named Woody Guthrie wrote a ballad about me, romanticizing my life of crime. It was also sung by a gal named Joan Baez and a guy named Bob Dylan, so I guess it was kind of a big deal. But yep, it's a nice little town you got here. Lots of pretty ladies. I always like the pretty ladies. Thank you very much for coming out to support our cause, and you all have a good night.
She's looking at you. They call me La Yoru, though I wasn't always so. I was once an Alajuda, fierce and beautiful. I rode alongside my husband in battle. When he grabbed his rifle, I too grabbed mine. When he mounted his horse, I too mounted mine, and we rode off into battle. And at night, we would lie under the stars and talk about our hopes and our dreams. And in the morning, we would take up arms and we would go off into that battle again. We were fighting for our land, for our culture, for our freedom. And then one day, my corazon, my love, fell beside me, never to get up again. A shot to the heart. I left the battlefield that day. I took my horses and I traveled north until I came to this little town and I settled by the river. And I toiled the soil every day till I made something for myself. Don't get me wrong. I had many suitors, but I wanted for none. Not without my corazón. And then one day, he came riding into town on his horse. Oh, playing his guitar, singing his song. He had the voice of an angel. Our eyes met and it was love at first sight. We courted and then wed. We had one niño and then another. Oh, we were so happy. But my husband was the son of a wealthy Spanish rancher. So he would be sometimes a week, sometimes 2, sometimes a month, sometimes 2. And then one day he came home and told me that his father said that I was no good for their Spanish blood. Didn't he know who I was? Didn't he know who he was talking to? Didn't he know that I had been a warrior, fierce and true? And like that, he was gone. And I picked myself up by the bootstraps. And I carried on every day, and then it was me and my niños working in the fields to provide for ourselves. And at night, it was me and my niños lying on the grass, looking at the stars, talking about their hopes and their dreams for their future. And we really were happy until he came riding back into town. He came riding back into town in the fanciest carriage I had ever seen. He came riding right in with the other one. He rode up to my 2 ladies and gave them 2 pieces of candy. 2 dulces. Was that all they were worth? Was that all we were worth? And like that, he was gone for good. But this time, I couldn't find my hope. This time, I couldn't seem to pull myself back up. This time, all I felt was despair. I took my children to the river that night to do the laundry. Put the clothes in the water, and I hit them against the rocks, and I began to scrub, and I cried out, why? What would I do? And the river answered in a whisper at first, give them to us, and we'll take care of them. Was I mad? Could I really be hearing what I thought I was hearing? I hit those clothes against the rocks again, and I began to scrub, and this time it was louder. Give them to us, and we'll take care of them. Surely I couldn't be hearing this. I hit those clothes against the rocks again, and this time I saw it all in a flash. The horses, the battle, the shouts, the blood, the love, the rejection. Give them to us! And I did. It was in that moment that I gained my sanity. Oh, my babies! Oh, what had I done? Oh, what did I do, my babies? I jumped in after them. I did. I jumped in after them. I swam after them. I did. I looked for them. I reached out for their little arms, but all I found were branches. I swam after them. I did. And then I put myself in the river. I died through my exhaustion, through my grief. Townspeople knew what I had done. I took a shallow grave, rolled my body in. That night, when the moon rose, I rose with it. And every night since, when I go along the Arkansas, and the purgatory and the fountain. Looking for my baby. Please, if you have little ones, leave them by the water. Leave them for I, Lion.
Get everyone in here. There's plenty of room. We had 125 in here last night, so. Get everyone in here. There we go. So before we start, can I get a little shake from you? Thank you. It tickles, but it gives me some confidence to give my speech tonight. So let me get a little shake. A little shake. A little shake there. How about a little shake? There we go. We'll talk a little bit about this in a minute, but my name is Joseph C. Welty. And if you look at the exterior of PBR, pretty much most of the buildings along the Riverwalk, throughout Pueblo, throughout the state of Colorado, the United States, even as far as Japan and overseas in Europe, my life has revolved all around brick. So to take you back to the beginning, it was 1866 and I was born in Iowa. My parents were from Germany and my father was a cobbler. So he made shoes for everyone in the community. Now you can imagine in the 1860s, 1870s, a cobbler didn't make a lot of money. So oftentimes I would have to go out and find work to help with the family. And in our small town in Iowa, we had this really nice brick making company. So I got some really great experience, I learned a lot, and made some money. But like most young people in the 1860s and the 1870s, I didn't want to have anything to do with mundane work like making shoes or making bricks. I wanted to go out west and strike it rich and find gold. That's what everyone was doing, or at least they said they were doing. So I was 22 in 1888 and I took the train to Denver. And I got off the train in Denver and I took the coach to Cripple Creek. Have you been to Cripple Creek? Yes. This was a long time ago. But that's when the gold fever really started. So I was a grub staker. I don't know if you know what a grub staker is, but basically a grub staker does whatever work they can do, for as long as they can do it, to save up as much as they can save so that they can stop doing that and they can go stake claim to some land and prospect for gold. So I did that until I was flat broke. I did it again until I was flat broke. Everyone kept on saying, oh, just keep trying, you're going to strike it rich one of these days. Well, I went as far as Nome, Alaska. So if you can imagine Nome, Alaska in the 1880s, here was this quiet, shy Catholic boy in the wild of the wild, wild west. Every man who walked the streets of Nome had a 6-barrel on his hip, and every night I'd see 1, 2, 3 people shot, killed, murdered right in front of me in the saloons, in the gambling halls, and the casinos of Nome, Alaska. So it really wasn't my place to hang out, but we did hear about other places inland in Alaska where they were actually prospecting for gold. So we gave that a shot too, but no luck. So we got out of Alaska just in time before winter arrived, because if you don't, you pretty much have to hunker down until the next season. But I found myself back in Cripple Creek. Now this time, I was doing some very specialized mining work, working with the ore, blasting, laying dynamite, very, very deep in the shafts up in Cripple Creek. And we had a special signal system for when we needed to get either the ore out of the mountain or when we needed to get out of the mountain. So if we pushed the buzzer one time, that meant that we were just sending ore out of the mine shaft. And it went really fast, and it flew straight through the top, out the trap doors. If we pushed the buzzer twice, that meant that we were actually sitting on top of the ore in a basket. And we wanted to get out, but not as fast as the signal button buzzer. So when we were ready to go, we pushed the buzzer twice and nothing happened. We pushed the buzzer twice again and nothing happened. We realized that the signal post commander at the top of the shaft had fallen asleep. When he did wake up, he only heard one buzzer. So we were flying through that shaft like ore all by itself. We were saying our goodbyes, we were screaming, we were yelling, we didn't know what was going on. So, by the grace of God, there was a gentleman at the top who was one of the assistant managers of the shaft, and he looked down, saw that there was something dreadfully wrong. He couldn't slow it down that much, but he opened up every trap door, every chamber, all the way up to the top, so that by the time we got to the top, we literally just flew out of that mine shaft. Now, when we landed, all I remember is just landing and rolling and rolling and rolling. So when I finally stood up and realized I was alive, I told myself I'm never going back down into those mines again. I also had to rethink the whole gold thing. It'd been 12 years and I'd only made $52. Not a real good return on that adventure. So I wanted to really focus on the brick making. It was something that I had a passion for, and but I wanted to do it under my own terms. So I'd been to Pueblo before. I fell in love with the weather. I loved Fountain Creek. I loved the Arkansas River. And so I found some investors, and in 1902, we opened up the Summit Press Brick Company on the east side at 13th and Erie. Now that was a really great thing for a lot of different reasons, but most importantly, as a business, the clay that's right along Fountain Creek is excellent for making the bricks that we were making at that time. So there's nothing better than starting a business and having your raw materials right at your back door, front door, side door. The other thing that was really important, and that was really about the community, was that many of the families on the east side were having a really tough time financially. A lot of them couldn't get jobs in the steel mill. So I was able to hire a lot of these families who were already right in my own backyard. One of those families was the Nason family. And the Nasons had it so bad one winter that the father and the two sons, they would literally walk the tracks right here along Fountain Creek, and they would pick up coal that had fallen off of the trains. And they would collect that coal just enough so they could heat up their small house during the winter on the east side. So I hired the father and the two sons, and they also had a beautiful daughter. Her name was Pauline Sophie Nason. I called her Pearl. And 7 years later, in 1909, we married. Now, we don't talk about it very much, but she was 20 years younger than I was. Now, that wasn't a problem for me at all. But in town, we tried not to talk too much about our age difference. But we had a great marriage, lots of kids, we had a wonderful time together. And it was just wonderful. She really changed my life. Now, you guys have been really polite. No one's really asked me about my hook or my lack of hand. Are you curious as to what happened to my hand? You curious? You better say yes. No, I'm usually very, very good about worker safety in the plant. And inside of the brick plant, we have this huge machine. It's called a brick press machine. It does exactly what its name says. It presses bricks. Well, one day it malfunctioned, and so I turned the machine off, and I'm kind of a tinkerer. I like to fix things, so I was down inside trying to fix it, jostling things around, and one of the other workers didn't realize that I was down there doing just that, and he turned on the machine. But it didn't malfunction. It worked just fine. Chopped off my hand. I don't remember much about that incident. It was really messy. I remember that part about it. But the doctor, he made me this prosthetic hook. He also made me a prosthetic hand. And he made me a prosthetic hammer. I was a carpenter, and he said, so what else do you want on the end of your stomach? And I said, well, I don't want to, not be able to do certain things that I love to do. So he made me a hammer also, which was on the end. It's really heavy. I would have worn it tonight, but maybe next year in the Ghost Walk if you come bring it in. But in any case, when you lose a limb, you somewhat have to change your lifestyle a little bit. And for me, I couldn't shave anymore, so I had to go to the barber every morning. That wasn't so bad. I had to learn how to write with my left hand, and I wasn't too confident, so I used to always make sure that when I had a photograph taken of myself, I would put my hands behind my back. So you've gotten a little bit better picture of what it was like in the early 1900s along Fountain Creek on the east side making bricks. Well, if you walk around Pueblo, you'll find Summit Brick everywhere. The Arts Center, all of the high schools, the ice rink, the transit center, just to name a few. So 4 generations of Welties have operated the plant. In fact, my great-grandchildren and my grandchildren run the plant today. In fact, they were all on the ghost walk last night. Just 2 weeks ago, they delivered their last shipment of bricks for a 55-story skyscraper in New York City. So Summit Brick is truly all over North America, as far as Japan and also in Europe. So when I look back at my life, I don't find it as glamorous or as adventurous as maybe I thought it was going to be when I was 22, wanting to go out and strike it rich and find gold. But when I look back at my life, there was a lot of luck. But then when you think about luck, it really is just a lot of hard work, a lot of perseverance, and in my case, a lot of stubbornness. So I've had a great life, and I wish you all the same. So have a good night, everyone.
Well, while we're waiting for the rest of the folks across the street there, I'll tell you that what we're doing here is we're showing you how people used to read back 80 years ago in Pueblo. I hope you enjoyed this.
I'm doing what women do best, shopping.
Whoa! Hey, look, they cut down old Monarch yesterday, even after all them people signed the petition to save it.
What on earth for?
Well, you may remember that a few years back, well, it was 1874, they wanted to put a rail line down through there on Union Avenue, and that huge old cottonwood tree had such giant roots that laid right up on top of the ground that they couldn't lay no track down there. So they had to go all the way around it, and so now here it is, 1883, and they're saying that it impedes progress. Oh, but look at this. The city council voted to have the tree cut down after they heard that a group of citizenry was coming to the meeting with a petition to save it. And so they adjourned the meeting early, and the next morning they cut down a 388-year-old tree is cut down. You know, I heard down at the saloon that it was that Postmaster George Stimpson what hatched the plot to cut it down because it obstructed his view. Dadgum bunch of crooks, all of them.
I remember when we first came to Pueblo, we had just gotten married, and we came in on that prairie schooner from Oklahoma. Well, if you remember right, Union Depot ain't been built yet because there weren't even any trains coming to Pueblo at the time. So you and I stayed in that boarding house on Union, you know, the one across the street from the tree.
Oh.
Well, you and I were so daggum tired that night, we just went straight to bed. Well, I woke up that next morning so excited to see Pueblo for the first time. Threw open those window curtains, and there was that man hanging from the tree, stone cold dead. I ain't never seen anything like it in my life. I swear, I had a heart attack that day.
I heard you scream, and so I ran to that window, and the look on that man's face, I'll never forget it.
Some of the women that grew up here in Pueblo from church, they said their menfolk used to gather up a posse, hunt themselves down an outlaw or desperado or one of those type, and then they'd take him down to the river by the cottonwood trees. Have themselves a people's court right there.
Wait a minute, you said that this is the church women telling you this story?
The same menfolk you go to the saloon with. Well, they tie the men up, take him to the tree and hang him, but there ain't no records as to how many there actually was.
Yeah.
Alice said there was at least 10 or 15 that she knew of. Now, there might not have been no circuit riding judge that came through Pueblo very often at the time, but they could have put the men in jail till one come through. That tree is just a symbol of lawlessness.
Well, I understand what you're saying, but it weren't the tree's fault.
Well, no one said it was.
I think they ought to take them councilmen and they all ought to be thrown out of office.
Oh, I could not agree more. And they most certainly will not be reelected. But I'm glad that tree's gone, though. It was just a stain on Pueblo's beautiful history.
Well, I don't know that I can say I agree with you there, honey.
Just why not?
On second thought, maybe I can say that. I agree with you, honey.
All right. Have you ever seen a damned rascal before? Now, ladies, don't say my husband. You have seen one now. My name is Private John Sparks, and I served as a hunter in the United States Army under the command of Lieutenant Zebulon Montgomery Pike. Damned rascals. Damned rascals. That's what he called me and the rest of his men. He put it this way. My men are perfectly capable of getting the job done. But all in all, a set of damned rascals. Oh, we got the job done all right. We did our best under the worst possible conditions. You see, Zebulon Montgomery Pike was a contemporary of two better known, and I like to say better liked explorers. You know, Lewis and Clark. And I don't know if it was professional jealousy or just his ambition for fame and glory that caused his ego. I've never met a more pompous prig in my life. It all starts in 1806. Pike was asked, sort of secretly, by the commanding general of the Army, James Wilkinson, to lead an expedition to find the headwaters of the Arkansas and Red Rivers. Now this is kind of fishy because Wilkinson was being paid to spy on the United States by none other than Spain. He'd asked Pike to scout out all the territory along the southern borders of the Louisiana Purchase and even into Spanish territory. Now you see, all of the territory south of the Arkansas River belonged to Spain, and relations between the Americans and the Spanish were rocky. Why, Wilkinson hadn't even gotten President Jefferson's permission to send the expedition until after we had left. Well, we got underway in July, but we didn't make it to the Arkansas until October. And this is where things start to get dicey. You see, we'd made no preparations for winter. We had no winter clothing, supplies, and especially equipment. But the glorious Zebulon Pike decides, then we must press on. Whew. Not only had he decided to press on with the mission, but he had become fascinated with a snow-capped blue-gray mountain that we watched rise out of the prairie horizon for the better part of a month. You know this mountain as? Why it's called that is beyond me. You see, he never made it to the top. Oh, he made it to the top of Mount Rosa, which gives him a special distinction as being the first U.S. citizen to summit a peak of the Rocky Mountains. But come on, who knows where Mount Rosa is? The real story is Pike had to turn back.
He and the men he was with had no warm clothing. They were up to their waist in the snow, and they hadn't eaten for 2 days. This should have been a warning for Pike of future things. Well, he and the rest caught up with us in what is now, well, Pueblo. We spent a few days here, and then, had we known what was to be our fate, we might have been a little more reluctant to press on. But we followed the Arkansas River up through the Royal Gorge. We even spent Christmas in what is now Salida. We wandered about that part of Colorado, and we even left the frozen river track of the Arkansas River, only to pick it up again a few weeks later. Pike said it was the Red River. We wandered, and we froze, and we froze, and we wandered some more. Occasionally, we'd eat buffalo meat, which I had shot. Eventually, that would run out too. Then we would freeze, and we would wander, and we would starve. Well, we followed the track of this frozen river until we wandered back into the Royal Gorge. And this is where we realized that we were no closer to finding the headwaters of any river than we were to finding something warm to wear. Now there's nothing to do but press on. We took our course southwest. Pike was still hoping to meet up with the Red River, but by this time things had become quite dire. You see, 9 of the 16 men in our company were suffering